This series features experts from our diverse sources database, a publicly available list of experts of different races, genders, ages, and ethnicities in an effort to encourage journalists to be more inclusive in their reporting. Not your same old sources also support community media by facilitating access to newsmakers and government officials who can talk about timely issues of concern to New Jerseyans. Today's panel is especially timely as New Jersey's housing crisis continues to worsen, marked by rising homelessness, soaring property taxes averaging over $10,000 a month, and a severe shortage of affordable rentals. Additional staffing cuts to the Department of Housing and Urban Development officials and staff also pose challenges to accessing affordable housing. In just a moment, we'll welcome today's host and moderator, Dana DiFilippo of the New Jersey Monitor, who will lead today's conversation with guests, including housing advocates and academics and researchers. A few reminders, today's event is being recorded and we'll have time at the end of the panel for questions from the audience. So please raise your hand, ask directly, or drop them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them during our time here together. Thanks again for joining us, and I'll turn it over to our host, Dana DiFilippo.
Hey everybody. As Oni said, I work for the New Jersey Monitor. We are a digital site that is part of State's Newsroom, and the point of State's Newsroom is to expand coverage of state politics and policies at state houses around the country. And so we launched in 2021, and we've been kind of diving deep into whatever we can at the New Jersey State House. And of course, one of the issues that frequently comes up in bills is affordable housing. Now, politicians don't like the word crisis, right? And very rarely frame this as such. In fact, you will often hear them talking about affordability and how affordable New Jersey is. But, when the governor just last month introduced his budget proposal, I have to read you a statement that Craig Coughlin, who's the Assembly Speaker, said. If you hang on a second, I'm going to read it. He said, "I am proud of the progress we've made to keep New Jersey an affordable place to live while meeting our obligations and making prudent investments in the future. From our continued efforts to provide property tax relief and fund programs to help New Jersey families, we have made real strides in improving the quality of life for everyone in New Jersey." So that was a statement that he put out after Governor Murphy put out his $58.1 record-setting, $58.1 billion record-setting budget proposal. But we all know the reality is very different from that. So in reality, as Oni said, there's all kinds of things that contribute to the affordable housing issues in New Jersey that make it crisis. New Jersey is always one of the most expensive states to live, and no matter what list you look at, housing costs are one of the main reasons why. There was a Harvard study, and Joe, I think I sent you the link, but more than half of renters in New Jersey are considered cost burdened. And what that means is, the old axiom, when you buy a house, you shouldn't spend more than 30% of your income or on utilities in the house itself. But what that cost burden means is that these are folks that are spending more than half of that. So more than half of New Jersey residents are cost burdened. We have, as Oni mentioned, the 200,000 unit shortage of affordable housing in New Jersey. Homelessness is up. It's been up since 2021. It's up 24% just in the past year. New Jersey has no statewide rent control. And so not a lot of states do have that, but some do. California and Oregon have it. New Jersey does not. Vacancies are shrinking. Evictions are up. We have 12 evictions for every 100 rental households. I could go on and on. There's all kinds of statistics. As Oni mentioned, the price of property taxes topped 10,000 for the first time. Foreclosures are up. And at the same time, there's other things that are kind of like are tangentially related to housing that also drive up costs, inflation, unemployment, even storms, extreme weather. There's still Hurricane Ida people who are not back in their homes and are having problems getting assistance. On top of all that, there's President Trump, as Oni mentioned. So I just was at an event yesterday with Senator Andy Kim, in which the overall theme was the cuts to federal workers, but they were talking about how those cuts impacted specifically affordable housing, whether it's HUD workers that were cut, HUD funding that's going to be cut. People he had people there that live in HUD funded housing that are concerned that they're going to lose their housing. And all of these kind of factors combine to disproportionately impact certain populations, people of color, people of lower incomes. So all of this is to say that there's lots to talk about today. And I think a good place to start after we do the intros for the folks who are here, our experts who are here, is with the Mount Laurel doctrine. And that is a little complicated, so I'm going to let the experts explain that to you. But why don't we get first to our panelists? We have 3 today. We can, I guess it doesn't matter who we start with, so we'll pick one. How about we start with Victoria Bourret? And Victoria, when you're done, you can kick it off to one of the other 2, okay? So
Sure.
I'll stop.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Tori Bourret. I am a project manager at the National Low Income Housing Coalition. Been at the coalition for 7 years and focus on state and local innovation. And I'm sorry, who is the next presenter?
We could do, how about we kick it off to Kelvin? Is that all right? Kelvin Boddy? Am I saying it right?
Oh, that was very French, Kelvin Boddy, but it's not as exotic. But Director of Healthy Homes and Communities with the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey. Very briefly, it's about 300-ish strong membership organization of nonprofits, community developers, organizers, and philanthropists. Goal is pretty much providing technical assistance in the neighborhoods where our organizations work, either through funding or best practices, or kind of translating their needs across the state up to the advocacy field at the State House.
I am Dr. Julia Nevarez, and I work here at Kean University. I will be the academic trying to bring some sort of inspiration and a global perspective on housing. I'm very glad to be here.
I think that 2 of our experts had presentations that they wanted to make. I think unless anyone objects, now it might be a good time to do those. Joe, does it matter who goes first?
No, doesn't. We can start with Dr. Nevarez if she's ready.
First, I want to say thank you for the invitation to be in conversation about the important topic of housing, of dwelling, of the relationship between the home and its habitat. In this presentation, I will follow a relational perspective to account for the lived experience of dwelling and larger context, urban and global. Those are my areas of expertise. And I mean, I know that at the state and local level is becoming more and more important to bring about efforts to deal with this issue, but I cannot help myself but to include also the global level and the level of the way that urbanization is happening across the board in many different cities around the world, where the issue of housing, it is also very precarious. I decided to bring about a different language because I think that we are at a juncture in which we need to expand the way that we refer to these very crucial issues. And I like to call it about is and habitats, because sometimes in the conversations about housing, we forget how important it is to have a roof over your head and how a basic need that is that every human being requires. So I'm thinking here more from the perspective of we human species, the kind of environments that we create, placemaking as that meaningful and important component of our lives, and then urbanization and the right to the city. In terms of the human species, It is a concept that is less anthropocentric, that it makes us relate to the environments that we inhabit, something that we owe to conversations about the Anthropocene and humans' impact on the environment through development, and how we are now the dominant species in the world that dramatically have altered the habitats in comparison to other species. The environment where the resources are becoming increasingly scarce, placemaking as the meaning of the places we inhabit, and urbanization, the form of development that has characterized human interventions in the environment, and the form of dwelling in which most humans currently live in the planet. The right to the city refers to the urban as affected and affecting, not only from the public, government, and the private sectors of markets, but as the way we also shape it with our presence, participation, appropriation, livability, and imagination that allow us to create alternative social spaces. I like to frame this within the notion of the global professional class and tourism as the way that most cities develop today, as the basic and essential way in which cities currently develop to attract the global professional class and tourists by developing the city as a branded, commodified experience that is data-driven in smart urbanism, where sentient spaces collect data to inform the delivery of goods and services. And I'm going somewhere with this. Next slide, please, Joe, thank you. So here we have brand in the city with iconic architecture, green in the city, sustainability and carbon reduction. I was just evaluating a grant from Hong Kong that was looking at Frontier, a United States global company that is offering incentives in the form of money and created a new market for the creation of carbon reduction that in the future might be like something that cities searching for sustainability might need to offer in a similar way that we offer sanitary services and safety. This can be another panel. Cycling, traffic safety, and the commodification of the experience of the city. I'm bringing these to your attention because these are all the factors that in the global way in which development is happening in cities is creating the same issues and the same limitations that I think Dana so eloquently listed at the beginning of our conversation. Next slide, please. So what I decided to do was to look at some of the data that makes evident what is already known, which are the challenges that cities face in terms of residential areas to live and how those prices are increasing. This is my very humble way of sharing with you that this issue is happening in different cities across the world. And that global perspective is necessary, I feel, to develop solidarity and to develop comparative perspectives on way of how to deal with increasing affordability of housing. Next slide, because I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I just wanted to share with you that New Jersey housing price shows housing prices increasing. All development as the way that it is portrayed in cities is luxury development. The percent of rent burdened households in New Jersey, New Brunswick is the highest. Dana already spoke about this. New York City is the highest in our area. And Dubai has the strongest market for price growth in the Middle East. And this is looking at it from a market perspective. The local and the global, how local urban phenomena finds a correspondence at the global level in terms of the price of residences is what that data shows. And as I mentioned, the housing crisis is an urban global phenomenon dealt with differently across different locales. For instance, public housing in Montreal and Barcelona might not have the stereotypical aesthetics of the United States. We can discuss this in the Q&A later. But notions of social housing as those advanced by my colleague, Dr. Jacob Carlson, might indicate alternative scenarios to address a housing crisis that produce homelessness and gentrification. We do not have enough time to address these issues in this short presentation, but we might be able to follow up in the Q&A The recent article from the New York Times could provide creative ways to address the crisis with our own dwellings, apartments adopt libraries, and the habitats we appropriate to solve the housing problem. Local initiatives and global approaches to the issue might prove helpful to develop communities of solidarity. And I will leave you with the recommendation to read Gaston Bachelard, The Poetics of Space, to treasure the refuges that we all need to thrive. And this is as a source of inspiration because I feel we need it badly. Thank you.
I think next up is Kelvin.
You know, we know that we have an extreme shortage of affordable housing. And what I like to sort of preface most of my points on affordable housing with is we've sort of entered a new era when we talk about affordable housing. If you'd rewinded the clock maybe 15 or 20 years ago, the first thing you thought of when you heard affordable housing might have been gray project towers or Section 8. And we've really hit a point now where affordable housing is starting to become a working class / a lower middle class thing. And so I always, when I start talking about like we need more affordable housing units, I always preface that with saying, please, like we're talking about apartments, homes that are outside of maybe single family zoning. There does need to be some of the traditional options that we do think about with kind of historic affordable housing, but I did want to set the stage for that. In New Jersey, we're in a unique position where in a lot of other parts of the country, they could argue that there's a money issue, the reason that we're not building as many units as we could be. In New Jersey, it's really not as much of a money issue. The money is there. It's more of a political will issue. Is the money actually being drawn into, say, pots of funding that can be accurately used for that? Or is the money being diverted for other purposes? So an example I always use is that we have an affordable housing trust fund in the state that is paid into by a series of different funds. The main one, I believe, is a realty transfer fee when you're selling a property deed. A portion of that has to go to some form of affordable housing development. But historically speaking, the state has sort of used the Affordable Housing Trust Fund as a backup purse whenever it's running out of money. And so oftentimes on a campaign trail, a politician will tell you, absolutely, I'm for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I will not raid it. I will not divert from it. And then it comes time for the state budget and things start getting a little tight. And suddenly millions are being pulled from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So I do really want to make that point there from an advocacy standpoint that we do need more units, not only now, but we're projected to need like another, I think, 85,000 to 90,000 in the coming decade. And so right now we're dealing with a political environment where the Affordable Housing Trust Fund has been raided for millions at this point. And we're losing a lot of federal funding on the, the Washington, D.C. level from HUD. And so we're really at a point right now from an advocacy perspective where we do actually have vehicles in place in this state, whether it's the Neighborhood Revitalization Tax Credit or the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, that we need to be making sure are protected as things get a little tighter. But, and, more than just being protected, being grown. I'm doing a quick advocacy shout out here, but we know there's room to increase certain things. For example, the development of without getting into the categorization, like super luxury homes. If you're developing a property that is going to sell for over $1 million, there's some room to maybe go a percentage or up in what the taxes for that to make up for what we're losing on the federal side of things. And just to not take up too much time, at least for kind of like the intro piece I wanted to talk about, is kind of from the design environment that we were just talking about as well. One of the things we also have to consider when we're doing new developments is, yes, there is a sense of equity in home ownership, but also when we're looking at the way towns have zoned, what's allowed to be built where. Obviously, single family homes are king when you look at most town zoning policies. But then when new development does start to get built, is it being developed in a place that nobody built in for a reason? One of the things that our organization as a network is dealing with right now is, great, you get the zoning through to get a new, affordable housing property developed, but it's in a part of the town that nobody built any residential units before because it floods like clockwork. And so, I'm going to get a bit into it later on, but I think really what we're looking at from the perspective of affordable housing here in Jersey, we're one of the most densely populated states in the entire nation. We know the need for affordable housing is going to get higher and higher. The projections are already there from our own government departments. And we're a state that, let's be real, when people get priced out of Philadelphia, DC, or New York, they end up in New Jersey. And so there's a lot of pressures that we're looking at right now. But I think really, and it's a double-edged sword in New Jersey, we have this thing called home rule where municipalities really have a lot of power in how they get to set up their zoning or their policies. And we also have things like the Mount Laurel doctrine, which obligates affordable housing development within those municipalities. But we also have the potential to, and again, I'll get a little deeper into the weeds on this to add into it. The point that was brought up earlier was that 50% of homes bought in a city like Newark were done by institutional investors. And so we have tools within the local municipalities that we can advocate for on the ground, like land banking, or sheriff sales where, so I'm not like speaking complete like gibberish for the uninitiated. Like the layman's version of it is essentially if you're going to be selling a property that's in a city like Newark, before it goes up to just a general auction where anybody with the money can buy it, it needs to preferably go to a pool of people that can prove they have addresses within Newark, so the property doesn't stay vacant and adds to the blight. So if I had to do a whole like bow in my introduction, times are tough right now, but we live in a state where not only do we have the money, we also have examples of the political and funding vehicles in place if they're protected and grown.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, there's so much in there right now, right? We'll have to come back to some of it. All right, Tori, I think you had some slides you wanted to share too, right? Are you able to share them? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you. That helped a lot. So hi everyone. So I'm Tori. I'm going to be kind of pulling in some of the information that Dana had talked about earlier and that Kelvin talked about, and just giving more of a federal and state and local kind of perspective specifically on affordable housing and homelessness. And so the National Low Income Housing Coalition actually works partners with the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey. So it's great to see you, Kelvin. And we produce a couple of reports every year. So I'm going to be talking about those reports and then some background as well, and some policy solutions. So as Dana mentioned, there's been an increase in homelessness, both for first-time folks experiencing homelessness and record high homeless counts. So 650,000 people experienced homelessness on a single night in 2023. There's also been, record high number of people living in unsheltered, living outside. And there's a shortage of 7.3 million homes affordable and available to the lowest income people. And then there's also the Grants Pass versus Johnson Supreme Court case, which really impacted homelessness, and basically said that folks are able to, localities and jurisdictions are able to criminalize folks experiencing homelessness for the single, for them just lying on the ground trying to sleep. They can be put away into jail for that and fined. And so that's really created interesting environment, really harmful. So really the underlying cause of the housing and homelessness crisis is housing, a lack of affordable homes, as well as a lack of comprehensive tenant protections, and then other factors, including poverty, discrimination, incarceration, lack of access to healthcare. So all of these things really combine together. In terms of looking at New Jersey specifically, so nationwide, there's a lack of 35 affordable and available homes for the lowest income folks. Our data looks at the lowest income people because those folks are not able to be met by the market. The market will never cover people that are on Social Security, SSI, SSDI, because there's no, they can't receive a profit, right, for setting rents at like $100, right? They're never going to get a or $200. They're not going to get a profit from that. It just doesn't make sense. So we really look at what are ways to increase housing for the lowest income people that can't be served by the market. And we see that there is a big need for those at the lowest income level to have affordable and accessible housing. So in New Jersey, only 31 of the lowest income folks, those making 30% AMI or below, there's only, again, 31 homes available to them. And then 86% of renters in New Jersey that are in the lowest income category are cost burdened, and 75% are extremely cost burdened. So the issue is pretty significant for those in the lowest income categories. And then this just shows basically that, you have to make more than a minimum wage job in order to afford a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment, a fair market rent. And you have to work more, if you're working that minimum wage job, you have to almost work you have to work two full-time jobs in order to afford rent. So it's just rents are unaffordable. They're not accessible to the lowest income people. And so, and then there's just some added issues in terms of there being backlash against folks experiencing homelessness. There's been sweeps of encampments and rising unsheltered homelessness, and then new state and federal laws that are really undermining housing first and criminalizing homelessness. And then, as Dana mentioned, there's threats at the federal level too, in terms of an executive order targeting federal agencies and departments, including the U.S. Interagency Council on Homeless, being told that they have to stop. They have to figure out what programs or what tasks they can stop and freeze. They also had unlawfully terminated 78 Fair Housing Incentive Program grants, and 4 of those organizations are filing a lawsuit against HUD. And then there's also been threats to fire half of HUD's workforce, including 2/3 of the offices on the ground that are really implementing these programs. So there's a lot happening in terms of the threat space, in terms of people having issues with affordability and with being able to stay in their homes. But we'd like to think about solutions also. And we do know already what the solutions are. It's really to expand housing and to support people with the lowest incomes, as well as to expand the supply of homes, provide emergency rental assistance to fill in those gaps, and strengthen and enforce renter protections. So I don't know how much, I have more details about all these things. I don't know. I can always speak for a long time. I feel like
I think we're going to tackle some of these issues in the Q&A. So yes, I think we still have an hour left, so we hopefully be able to get to some of these things in more detail. But yeah, I can't wait to get these slides from Joe at the end so that I can add them to my resource list.
Yeah.
All right, great. So I think we've kind of introduced everybody, learned a little bit about what they do. Let's start with a few questions, and then a little bit later we'll throw it to whoever's listening in. For folks who have questions, they can ask questions directly. So I think any conversation about affordable housing in New Jersey probably should start with. There's so many places to start, but probably should start with the Mount Laurel doctrine, because that really has shaped things in New Jersey, and it's a little bit complicated for people who maybe don't know what it is. So who wants to take that and kind of give the 25-cent version of what the Mount Laurel doctrine is and why it's important in this conversation?
I can certainly take a swing at it, and I'm sure Tori and Dr. Julie can definitely fill in. But as the very brief, if I had to explain it to you, because the train's coming, we don't have time. Essentially, Mount Laurel, I believe it was in the 70s, wanted to evict a lot of low-income people, and they didn't have any alternative affordable housing for them. So essentially, they were scattering them either to the slums of Philly or Camden, essentially. And so what sort of came out of a legal back and forth with that was that towns actually have to do a population count, and then based on that population count, a certain percentage of their new development has to be zoned for affordable housing. Because obviously populations change as time goes on, they have to go through subsequent rounds of what those obligations should be. And I believe we're currently it's on one hand, it's the 4th or 5th round, I believe.
Yeah.
4th. There we go.
Round. And in fact, don't they call that? There's a group they call it the Fair Share. So there's actually a group that advocates on this Fair Share Housing Center. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I think that was basically where I was going to fall off the cliff here with confidence, was that, yeah, the Fair Share Housing Center are the ones that really have stayed on top of that, which, yeah, there we go, was just shared in the chat. But that was like the train is on the way, and you had to go kind of explanation.
Tori, you wanted to say anything?
We focus on national issues, and so I'm not as familiar with the Mount Laurel decision. And so
That's fine. So I guess one of the kind of things that's gone along with this, and Kelvin had said that this dates back to actually 1975. There was a series of court rulings. 75 was the first one. I think the next one was in 83, but they've kind of tweaked it over the years. And when we're talking about rounds, it's basically as population evolves, the towns have to reassess basically and make sure that they have enough affordable housing in their homes. I mean, in their communities. And what's happening is that, you know, because New Jersey is such an expensive state, and there are so many communities that, you know, I mean, just think of most of North Jersey, for example, where the cost of living is way high, that are fighting it and feel like it shouldn't, you know. I think I was at a hearing once and they were talking about, you know, well, most of our town is green, and if we have to put in affordable housing, there goes the green space. So there's all kinds of excuses why people don't want this in their homes. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about some of the pushback that towns have been, you know, there's a pending lawsuit right now. Does anybody want to tackle this issue of why towns fight it and how, what that means then for the picture of affordable housing in New Jersey?
I will just briefly, so we're not just like going repeat here. I mean, a lot of it just comes down to NIMBYism, not in my backyard. The town agrees that it's going to, you know, do the obligation on pen and paper from like a bird's eye level. And then once it comes down to the actual town meeting where that development goes, it goes through hell in a handbasket. And another trick that a lot of towns were using for a while was they would say, oh yeah, no, we signed on for the obligation to develop affordable housing. We just have no money left by the time we get to it. And sorry, see you next year. And so what Governor Murphy did at one point, which was a really big benefit, was he just shoved a bunch of federal dollars down the pipe to the town, said, no, you have the money now. You cannot make that claim anymore. Start developing the homes. And so if I was just going to generalize my answer and then shut up very quickly, it's a lot of towns will agree at face value. Yeah, absolutely. And then when it comes time to decide where it is, it never gets out of committee, or it does get out of committee and they go, well, we had it marked in the budget, but we actually went over on the rest of the lines before we got to it. So that's where a lot of the trickery comes in, at least to not do it, even though it's an obligation.
Okay. And, you know, Dr. Nevarez had mentioned that this is, you know, affordable housing is pretty much crisis everywhere, right? It's a global issue. It's a national issue. New Jersey is not unique in having this crisis, even if the politicians don't want to admit it, right? And so I guess if I would love to hear from each of you, if you had to pick one single thing in New Jersey that is kind of contributes to our affordable housing crisis, is there one or two, I'll give you two, things that you think make New Jersey unique on this and really kind of fuel this problem here? And I guess we could start. You want to start? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I just want to go back to the previous topic, and it's more a commentary on how gratuitous that justification that we have greened the city, we don't want to bring public housing. And it was one of the points that I was bringing to our attention, which is how stereotypically ugly public housing is designed in the United States. It doesn't matter what city you are traversing through, you can easily identify where public housing is, because it's this kind of aesthetics of high surveillance that permeates in the design. And that's why I wanted to bring the example of Montreal, for instance, where a colleague took me, he knows that I'm interested in these issues, and we were passing a quite beautiful neighborhood, and he said, Julia, this is public housing. So public housing doesn't necessarily need to be that ugly. So here I was toying with this idea, no, but that community, what they need is a charrette with architects and other professionals to develop ideas. Well, I think that it was just a justification to have affordable housing in that community, which I think reflects what the position is about it. But also a large degree of more information to be available for people as alternatives. So that's my commentary.
Anybody? I'm sorry if you hear my dog, I apologize. She's going crazy. So apologize. But does anybody else want to hop on that issue? And I think the question was if there was one kind of really bad thing that you had to point to as makes New Jersey unique and from this crisis everywhere else, what would that be? Like what is it about New Jersey?
Just very briefly, I would say in 2 words, home rule. Each municipality basically gets to be the king of its own sandbox or queen of its own sandbox. And that is very beneficial when it's a municipality that understands the issue, is very progressive in trying to fund what you want. You can charge ahead a lot of the other BS, but if it's a municipality that just is set in its ways, that is really tough to try to work through. And we all know zoning is the biggest interferer or barrier to developing affordable housing at this point. It was just one word.
Okay,
Yeah.
Tori or Dr. Nevarez, either of you want to weigh in on what makes New Jersey unique on this issue?
I can't
was-
weigh in about what makes it unique. I can weigh in on the fact that there is an affordability crisis across the US, and that housing availability of affordable housing for the lowest income people is one of the solutions, and there's a lot of proof showing that it works. But no, I can't speak specifically to New Jersey.
And I think that if we are talking about zoning, that it's a very important issue that also needs to be tackled in terms of what are the ways in which it could be altered. I mean, again, imagination and information are key here, but we also understand the market forces that make specific predilections for the use of space preferred than others, right?
Yeah, if I could briefly add, I saw a comment actually. Yeah, if you can get a rent cap established locally in your municipality, that's usually the better place to start from an advocacy standpoint. I know we don't have statewide rent control. Some of the cities are looking at it, and we also do not have right to counsel. So it was getting mentioned earlier with evictions. In most states, the eviction filing fee, if you're a landlord and you want to begin the process of getting someone out, it's usually, it's not expensive, but it's usually up there. We're about $50, I believe, which puts us in the same category as like states like Missouri and stuff like that. And so from a landlord perspective, it's incredibly cheap to evict someone if they if you don't want them in the property. And then because we don't have right to counsel, there's no legal representation guaranteed for the tenant being evicted. So Jersey City does have a right to counsel ordinance because they were able, as the comment mentioned, to locally do the advocacy to get that passed. But the nature of the beast that is Jersey, advocacy is probably best done, at least in my opinion, that way, kind of through local leaders. And then once the sum of the whole kind of like ends up pushing the case for a statewide, policy to be made.
We do have a couple really good questions in the comments too, and I'm going to back up for a couple of them. One is from Maria Amato, and I'll just read it. She said, part of the solutions presented by the panel today is expanding the number of housing units, especially apartments, to be rented to families who currently don't have a permanent place to live. That's a good thing, but how would you do this? How would you get this done? There is now a national trend for real estate companies or corporations. This is the investor problem that I think somebody alluded to this. There's now a national trend for real estate companies or corporations to buy up as much inventory as possible, including deteriorated buildings, renew them, and then essentially flip them, rent them out at high prices. What can you do? What can be done to counter this trend? So I know that's happening in a lot of urban areas. I think Newark in particular has really seen their housing stock impacted by that. But I think it's also just across the board. My actual personal story, my sister was just looking for a house, and she was and in the area that she was looking in Morris County, she was encountering the same thing. The houses were just disappearing really quickly because investors were snapping them up. So how do you fight that trend? No one wanted to weigh in?
It's just so difficult when we see how I feel a little bit silly coming up with alternatives, like the example that I offer from that article from the New York Times, like create an apartment on top of the public library in New York City. That is not going to happen. Nor has it happened, for instance, the idea that was floating around after the pandemic of using a lot of the office space that was, still probably remains unoccupied in Midtown Manhattan, which I think was a great idea. But they mentioned that it will require a lot of capital to make that transition. So here we go back to square one. So I think the silence speaks volumes in terms of, where the alternatives are when we are dealing with such market, because population is still increasing globally. So that's why I like to frame it as human species, because we are still in a progressive route to keep on having more humans on the planet, right? Not that I'm advocating for the contrary, but I think that aggravates definitely the market situation.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
Yeah, I'll just briefly jump in and say, so I keep harping back on the kind of local advocacy piece, but what you were just talking about with the example in Newark or other cities where you have, companies like BlackRock that are pretty much buying up double-digit percentage of the housing stock. You do have examples where, and again, this kind of goes back to it varies how it affects different areas. So in a lot of the cities where we have membership, they've actually on a local level advocated for things. I believe I spoke earlier about the Newark land banking law, where if a property is being sold within the city, it needs to be bought by a developer or a resident or a business owner that can prove that they're living within the city. And alternatively, I think in Camden, they did something, well, this is a statewide thing, but they've used the Community Wealth Preservation Bill, which I believe utilizes sheriff sales at auction to essentially try to pipeline the homes back into the local community. So there really is potential for, on a local level, to sort of get ordinances like that passed and enforced. But it also, again, comes down to kind of the accountability of the powers that be in the area, as some of the municipalities really like the short-term cash they're getting from these developers buying up these properties. And so the local incentives might not be enforcing, say, blight or abandoned properties as well as they could be. I'm not going to name cities, but we've worked in some municipalities where the penalty for leaving a lot vacant and essentially collapsing on itself is like, it's insulting. And so, I think there really is potential if the discussion were to be had in, again, enough areas where the impact can be measured sustainably in Jersey and advertised on a statewide level, a combination of making the cities actually enforce vacant and abandoned property acts on the negligent developers, but then also kind of educating and organizing the community in these areas that, yeah, you can, make enough noise at City Hall to get a referendum up to see if you want to get an ordinance on, these things passed.
One of the questions that's in the chat kind of touches on something that we've talked about, but we didn't really talk about it in detail, and that is rent caps, right? I mentioned earlier that California and Oregon have these laws that cap the rate of increase, and I'm really interested in where policymakers fall down on the job and what you think they should be doing. So should New Jersey policymakers act to impose a statewide rent cap, and what would that be? Like, what's a fair amount of increase from year to year? And what should policymakers be doing about it? So who wants to jump in there?
So, so we track actually a lot of tenant protections across the country, including rent caps, and we like to say there's some policies that are anti-rent gouging. So it doesn't say you have to keep the rents at 2%, but looks at maybe 5 or 10% and includes consumer price index. And so that's the law in Oregon and Washington, I believe. And then I think Connecticut, sorry, I'm just pulling up my database, but I think Connecticut also has rent stabilization as well. And so that's one way actually that states do that, is they allow for consumer price index adjustments on top of the limit on the percentage of increase. So and it is doable. Like I mentioned, there's actually 5 states that have passed rent stabilization protections across the country. And so that's definitely one way to go about doing it. And of course, when you think about some of these protections, you need to make sure you have adequate enforcement as well. That's a really key piece of it, because you can say, this is what landlords should do, but if you don't have any mechanism for enforcing it, then how does it really happen, right? So, and I think there's also around this rent control and rent stabilization issue, there's been some, folks pointing to, well, doesn't it, prevent people from building or prevent, landlords from making their properties better and improving their properties. And in terms of that, there's not a lot of research around that, and the research isn't conclusive. So they're just, there's a lot of benefits to rent stabilization. And like I said, when you account for the consumer price index, it's there's a lot of opportunity there. So
I just want to add, if I may, in New York City, I live in New York City, we do have rent control and rent stabilized, but it has been under attack. So I think that the aspect of enforcement for the landlord to follow up on implementing, but maybe we should have also an improvement cap as well. That this percentage of improvements need to also be happening. I do remember once, I think that painting your apartment every 2 or 3 years, is part of the law. Very difficult to implement if you don't have enforcement.
yeah. So, sorry.
No, you unmuted
No,
first.
Oh, I was going to say, so a lot of these tenant protections kind of couple with each other and should be paired. So especially around, improvements and property improvements, often you see code enforcement standards coupled with just cause, or just cause coupled with rent stabilization, and just cause is preventing people from being evicted for no reason. So sometimes folks will want to evict people if there is rent stabilization measures. And so just cause is a way to get around that and say that, you have to have a reason stated in the law to evict somebody, or else you can't evict them. And of course there's exceptions, but again, that's a lot of these laws are needed to really kind of get rid of the loopholes that folks were able to get around, because there's a lot of ways to kind of get around these laws, and a lot of things to consider when folks are writing this legislation in terms of how to avoid those loopholes, or make it harder for landlords to get around their obligations.
And since we are talking about rent caps and improvement caps, if we may, I think that part of the conversation very soon will need to include climate change and extreme weather impacts. I was just reviewing a grant from Hong Kong and Southeast Asia, and the researcher is looking at the impact on housing and homelessness from low-lying areas or areas that were impacted by typhoons or hurricanes, and how that makes the housing crisis increase dramatically.
And actually speak a little bit to that. Someone mentioned in the beginning that we still have residents from Hurricane Ida that are dealing with pretty much the fallout of that. And one of the more consistent trends we saw was an area would be damaged. Its affordable housing, stock would either be flooded, landslide, God forbid, or just collapse. And there was quite literally, like, even if the township wanted to put them somewhere, there just were no alternatives anywhere outside of hotels in the same area. And so, no, I think the importance, and I know that was a point that came up in the comments, that yep, there we go. Atlantic City, actually, they've projected on top of the food desert issue that I believe it's by the 2040s or 50s, it's like half of the affordable housing stock in Atlantic City is either going to be directly exposed to waterfront, or is going to be within a new flood zone. And if anybody, knows anything about Atlantic City, most of the people that live in that city are working at the casino or at a business that supports the casinos in some form. So you're really, when you're talking about an affordable housing stock, up to half of it being vulnerable or gone in a place like Atlantic City, you're talking about the ripple effect being, the businesses that essentially keep Atlantic City relevant also looking at major losses. So I think that's also like a framing that we do need to have when we're discussing like climate migration or just a lack of affordable housing is, this isn't just poor people that you don't like to see being out of sight, out of mind. These are folks working your schools, your businesses, your essential institutions that if they can't live here, those institutions go under as well.
Can we talk a little bit about that too, in terms of, I'm interested in this conversation about Atlantic City, and specifically looking at two things. One, are there particular places in the state where this is worse than others? And by this, I kind of mean everything. Like are there like, where is this more of a crisis than in other places? And I also want to talk in that kind of vein. I want to talk about the disproportionate impact that affordable housing or housing instability really has on certain communities, right? And so it seems like cities, people of color, people low income. But there was a question in the comments, so I was hoping you could kind of dive down into those issues. But there was a specific comment, and now I got to find it. But it was in the question in the comments about immigrant communities. And so so can you talk, I'm kind of all over the map here, but can you talk a little bit about if there's a problem area in the state, and also the disproportionate impact that this has on certain communities in certain parts of the state?
Sure, I'll be just very brief, which is, it kind of goes back to the opening point I made, where when you have new development going into a town, it's like they're finally doing affordable housing. It's like, okay, but if that land hasn't been developed on yet, I really got some questions. It's like a buffet in a landlocked state, like what's going on here? And so, like, what I try to say is, I'll use the example of really anywhere near a waterway. So it's not just the coast, it's rivers as well. The city of Elizabeth, there was an apartment complex called Oakwood Plaza, which had been around since the I believe 60s or 70s. And it was a known flood zone going all the way back to Tropical Storm Doria, which was like late 70s. And so when Hurricane Ida rolled through Elizabeth, in the immediate kind of aftermath of it, there were only 6 deaths in the city, and those 6 deaths were all in the first floor of Oakwood Plaza. So it was a known flood zone. It had flooded out repeatedly. Everyone had been raising alarm bells for it for really almost half a century at that point. And as kind of to your earlier point, it was the more vulnerable populations of the city, low income, immigrant, down on their luck, that were tending to live in those areas. So unless somebody died, it wasn't taken seriously. And so it really sucks, because I make the point all the time, when a very wealthy area gets hit, you have people out there, cameras, adjusters, they're talking about the material loss and how bad it is. But when we know that some of our most vulnerable members are living in flood zones consistently, that you wouldn't build a school in, you wouldn't build a hospital, you wouldn't build a daycare, but you'll build Section 8 there. And you don't really think of it as a problem until actual lives have been lost. And that's sort of what it's, I hate to say it, but it really is. It's going to be high immigrant, low income, just, other factors of pretty much our most vulnerable populations being put in the most vulnerable housing stock. And I won't get too deep into any more examples here, but in a city like Newark, when you look at the map of that, the Ironbound neighborhood is, so the actual river running like kind of west of Newark, for the most part, it's industrial sites, warehouses, things like that of that nature. And then there's a couple affordable housing complexes that are put right there kind of in the middle of them. And those, every time that neighborhood floods, that area sort of acts like a bulwark or a shield for the residential homes behind them. Now, those residential homes do get flooded too. It's not like a suffering Olympics, but for the most part, you can see that nobody wanted to build residential units on that side of the river or near there until it was time to put an affordable housing complex down.
So, and I'm going to read the question that it was from Mohsen Zahir, because I maybe he put it a little bit more eloquently than I did, but he said, how is the shortage of affordable housing in New Jersey impacting the growing immigrant communities, especially as they seek housing closer to jobs and educational opportunities? So I reframed that way. I don't know if anyone wants to address that. And then, and as a follow up to that, I think there's a lot of overlap here with the Trump policies, right? Because the Trump policies impact a lot of the immigrant community, people who struggle financially, and so then I wonder what the solution is. But again, if anybody wants to touch on Zahir's question about how this crisis impacts specifically immigrant communities.
Yeah, sure, briefly, and then I'll take a step to the side, which is it just goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is if you have residents that they might not be documented, they might not be the most wealthy, they're buying into older housing stock, perhaps, filling it past capacity for what it should be reasonably. During the COVID-19 pandemic, that was a massive issue where you had undocumented residents living, 5 strong in a 1-bedroom apartment. And unfortunately, the transmission rates were insane within, properties like those. But you also, it's just the older housing stock in general. So, if you have a neighborhood where the house might still have lead paint in it, the pipes might still have lead in the plumbing, something of that, chances are, the houses are going to get older and more dangerous to your health, but the populations that are coming in change. So you're always having a vulnerable population. It might have been one demographic that was staying in like the old crappy houses on this side of the railroad tracks with lead in the paint. They kind of get some economic mobility and move up, and then it's tomorrow's vulnerable immigrant population. The houses keep getting older, but so yeah, it's essentially I was going to say the immigrant situation is, unfortunately, it's putting people in a position where they have to not live a quality of life that they reasonably should be within New Jersey, and also within older housing stock that's presenting more dangers to their health than, traditional housing stock should.
So there is some overlap here with the policies that have been coming out of the Trump administration. And so can someone give us kind of the bird's eye view of what the Trump administration specifically has been doing? And Tori, you touched on this in your presentation, so maybe you want to take this one. But on affordable housing issues, like everything he's doing, how is that not making things better?
Yeah, so our federal resources provide a large amount of affordable housing options at the state and local level, right? So there's so many different types of federal funding that goes to housing. And so cutting staff, cutting costs for that can have a really dire impact on state and locals' abilities to meet that housing supply and the need for affordable housing. So right now they have put out or there's, they want to, there's talk about cutting half of HUD's staff, which would have impacts on the state and local level, because there would be, especially they want to cut 2/3 of the field offices. So that would really impact how programs are being administered and impact people's receival of these resources. And so that's a really that's a big deal. And so again, like I mentioned, a lot of a large chunk of funding is really coming from, federal housing resources. So that's why it's critical, that we still have those resources available. They did pass a continuing resolution to fund the budget last week. And that has set a level. There was an increase for HUD programs, but not enough to fill the gap of housing choice vouchers. So it's not sufficient to cover the housing choice vouchers that exist right now. And vouchers are really what people can take with them to different apartment buildings and use it to cover the gap between their income and the rent. And so yeah, so that's kind of what we're facing right now. I think there are opportunities at the state and local level to fund housing and support tenants and whatnot. And so we're putting some focus and highlighting efforts at the state and local effort around that. But again, really also we're taking some actions. We did a rally outside of HUD a couple weeks ago and held a press conference with federal legislators about the cuts to HUD. And we had Representative Maxine Waters and a couple other representatives go up and try to talk to Scott Turner and deliver a letter to him about our concerns. And so they weren't able to deliver the letter. That's which is frustrating. But there is a broad concern. There was also just a letter that was written by Senator Rounds of South Dakota and Senator Reed of Rhode Island to Secretary Scott Turner about their concerns if HUD were to close 2/3 of the field offices. So there is action. We've had 25,000 people take action on our site. We have calls to action about encouraging your representatives to ensure that staffing is not cut at HUD and that these, resources and programs can still function. So there is a lot of action happening. A lot of national organizations and state and local ones are paying attention, are aware of these issues, and are mobilizing. Like I mentioned too, there's folks in the fair housing world and other housing spaces that are filing lawsuits and actions as well. So trying to go through the court route as well. So people are fighting.
Now,
But I
if,
ask-
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, but I have seen it in conversations about other pressing issues within the current atmosphere. Do you see then the role of the state and localities becoming stronger as an alternative to this situation?
So that was one of the questions.
My answer will be yes, but
Okay.
you definitely have that, ground experience. So I'm curious.
Well, I mean, so when Governor Murphy did his budget address just last month,
Yes.
one of the things he kept the word uncertain. If you did a Command F on his speech, the word uncertain came up a million times, right? So because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I guess this could potentially be a big problem for Murphy's last year. Could be a really big problem for whoever becomes governor next, right? So can we talk a little bit about this issue? Then in terms of state policy making, are there are there things here that you think New Jersey state legislators and the governor should be doing? And looking forward, we're going to have an election in November. We'll have a new governor in January. Are there things that that you think, like, are any of the governor's candidates, gubernatorial candidates, that you think are really going to be good on this issue, and any that you think aren't? So I'll stop talking. Anyone want to weigh in?
Well, as a 501c3, we are not allowed to get into that side of things. But what I would say is that we have a pretty robust set of policy recommendations as an advocacy organization that I'll share in the chat. But just to give a very, very brief kind of rundown on it, what it mostly comes down to is we know the federal money is just going to be gone, if not going. To your point earlier, actually, some of the universities, they tend to be pass-through organizations for federal money. And so there's a lot of some of them have the money, but the FBI is making some really weird threats. Some of them never got the
I don't want to talk about it because that's not the topic for this.
Right. So
the grant landscape is also very much affected.
Very screwy right now. So we're going to see a lot of smaller developers that may have relied on those especially here in Jersey, really start to maybe tighten their belts up a bit. But for our policy recommendations, where we're really at right now, without getting into the gubernatorial candidates or anything, we need to be a combination of protecting the fees and the vehicles I was talking about earlier, like the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the realty transfer fee, and we need to be expanding the ones that we know we can. So, I mean, I would love to see the Affordable Housing Trust Fund expanded in a perfect world, but also other things like the eviction filing fee, raise it above $50. Just to start doing little things that we know can fill the coffers a bit. So that's at least what I'd say from a state policy perspective. If my policy colleague Matt Hirsch was here, I'm sure he'd be running circles around me with exact testimony times and everything. But the best I can do for you is I'm going to drop a quick link to our policy priorities from HCD and NJ, which is basically our wish list of how we can get funding to preserve affordable housing development.
I would appreciate that. And Dana, I don't want to take your role, but I think there is a great question here that I don't know if it's related to zoning, and I have more of an academic perspective, but I would love to hear from the wealth of knowledge of our guest. He's asking, this is Carlos Avila. I would like to see if New Jersey has regulations allowing the use of garages or basements for use as housing. So
just home rule again, there's no statewide standard on what an accessible dwelling unit is, like an ADU for garages or anything like that. So you'd have to call your town hall and see how they feel about it. I can say most places do not like basements for the kind of flooding and risky life stuff that I was talking about earlier. So
well, and if I may add also, we are talking about flooding, but the convergence of climate related issues doesn't stop there. There is also the heat island effect, heating, overheating. There is also pollution. So this is a convergence of a lot of factors that is very likely to increase the housing problem, and for which we are not fully prepared.
Yeah, I'll just shut up quickly after this, which is we're talking about a point in time where most people are paying 50% give or take on their rent every month, which is insane. But also the cost of heating and cooling your house has gone up to record highs. And so not only are people getting hammered on the rent side of things, they're getting hammered on their utility bills. And just very quickly, if you live in an older house, like most people who are renting do, you're losing half of your heat or your air through cracks in the walls.
We only have about 10 minutes left, and I think we wanted to open up to any folks that are listening in to see if they have any questions that they would like to ask. And I forgive me if I missed any of the questions in the chat.
We
So
got a lot of them in the chat, but if anybody wants to, raise their hand and I can unmute you and you want to ask it out loud, as long as you keep it brief, 30 seconds max, we can have some back and forth here. We always like to try to do that. So if you'd like, you can raise your hand and you can ask your question out loud or a comment, again, as long as you keep it brief.
and
Okay.
or let us know too if we missed any of the questions in the chat.
I think we did a pretty good job of hitting them. I know Anthony Orlando had a few. He said, while it's important to increase the number of affordable housing units, environmental factors like floods could damage units, depending on where they are. I think we covered on that. He said, how do you suggest making enough affordable and sustainable housing units that can last in the face of these outside forces? I think we touched on that a little bit. But then Don Tagala asks, an unaffordable housing can lead to homelessness. Is there something being done for the homeless? I've been traveling a lot and I'm seeing more and more homeless people everywhere. What's being done to fix the homelessness crisis?
Take that question. I don't know if you're so the state of homelessness, like I mentioned earlier, it's rising across the country. I think there's this idea that by putting people by doing housing last approaches, so putting people in internment or basically internment camps, locking them away, putting them in jail, that it will fix the problem, but that will only create more of a problem, right? So because people need housing again. And so actually New Jersey has homelessness trust funds. They have 9 of them, county homeless trust funds, and they're all funded by, I just had it up, but a dedicated revenue source. And I think it's an impact fee, maybe, I can't remember. So that's like one option. I know we always talk about housing first and how really once you provide people with permanent supportive housing and housing options that can really address other factors in somebody's life. There's been a lot of countering against this narrative, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of fact and empirical based evidence around housing first and how effective it is. I think one of the reasons we're seeing an increase in homelessness is because of the pandemic and people aren't really having those conversations, right? And it caused a lot of housing insecurity, housing instability, and rents rose a lot. So, I mean, a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people had a hard time coming back from that. And so, I think it's crazy not to really consider that when we're looking at the current state of homelessness right now. And again, these approaches of criminalizing homeless folks it's just not going to help. It's going to create to the problem. When you have a record, it's only going to make it harder for you to get housing to be approved, and your credit's going to be tanked, which is going to make it harder because a lot of these places are charging people fines if they're camping on the street and then ultimately locked up. But yeah, it's an ineffective approach. What we really need is housing. And like I said, New Jersey has some, they have the trust fund, there's local trust funds, and then county trust funds, which support efforts to decrease and end homelessness in the state.
And we have just a few minutes left, but there's
Make a quick shameless plug, by the way. We did actually have a homeless bill of rights that was in the legislature for a while through, I believe it was Assemblyman Atkins and now Senator Timberlake. So I think it stalled out in committee, but at the same time, here's some of the text on it. So we have had attempts at getting a homeless bill of rights passed through the state legislature at one point, really last year.
Oh.
So
Yeah, a lot of most bills stall, but yeah, I mean, yeah, most bills go nowhere. But that's interesting. That is definitely worth an update on what the heck ever happened with that. Two other interesting points in the chat that I think kind of speak to you know, the not I wouldn't want to say hopelessness, but you know, the minimum wage. Okay, somebody Raymond Tyler wrote, you can't afford housing on $16 an hour, and Joe mentioned the end of the child tax credit. So are there other ways that kind of aren't so obviously tied to housing that policymakers should be acting, solutions I'm talking about, that could kind of ease this? And we have, I think, about 5 minutes left. So anybody want to say anything there?
The minimum wage needs to be increased.
Yeah.
We also need to be finding ways of making our banks and our lenders incentivized to do first-time home buyer programs and things of that nature. We're in a really bad place for first-time home buyer programs that banks have right now in the state. I think Santander was like the last big one that had one that like pulled out of that. So,
Dr. Nevarez, is there a specific like how what should the minimum wage be? I think you know, I live right across.
$5.
How much?
$25.
That would be great, wouldn't it? Yeah, I think Pennsylvania's, I live within, you know, spitting distance of Pennsylvania, and I think theirs is still really crazy low, like 7.25 or something.
7, yeah.
Yeah, and I should know this, but what is New Jersey's up to now? 15, 17, something?
15.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, if you have no money, yeah, this is not going to be no matter what they do, right?
I would also add that a way of, because we were talking a way to get a lot of like, say, federal dollars or state dollars in, and this is a case by case basis, but there's also tools that local municipalities can use, like community benefits agreements, where if a business is coming and building a giant sports stadium or a huge factory, try to have it baked into some kind of contractual agreement that they're going to build X number of affordable housing units as an offshoot of the complex. The Staples Center is like the big example that gets used over on the West Coast for that.
I think that is a great idea.
Okay. And any other solutions that we haven't talked about that you want, that anyone wants to mention? Because I would love to end this on a happy note. But anything else that, you know, we can, you know, people who would advocate on this can advocate to their policymakers with?
I know. I do remember many years ago, this white hair is not here in vain, that I had a colleague from Denmark, and what he was studying was social housing, but the one in which many families live in the same building and they take turns for cooking. So you don't need to cook every night because, you know, there are other members. So it is a notion of social housing that is more community oriented. I know that in the cultural context of the United States, that is almost like a sacrilege. But I think that it definitely deserves attention if we are thinking about the challenges that collectively we are going to be experiencing.